All right. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, everybody, to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, and I'm here with my good friends, Karen and Catherine and Dan. He's going to be just kind of in the background because he's at work and can't really participate today, but I'm sure that he will make faces at us and wave and smile and all that kind of fun stuff when he comes back. So that's exciting. We're going to be talking about, we're on chapter 15 of The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. So we're going to be talking about chapter 15, and this one is about habits, cultivating habits that work for you versus habits that work against you. But before we get going with that, then I want to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves. So ladies, jump on out.
Hello, this is Catherine Clement in Boulder, Colorado. Looking forward to today's discussion, and just want to say that Samantha, you're looking beautiful there this morning. You got like your hair is all dolled up and everything, and I'm not even coming on camera. But just want to wish everybody, of course, an amazing new year. Hope everybody had wonderful Christmas holidays or Hanukkah holidays or whatever you celebrate holidays. And I did. And even though I got to spend time with family online, which is kind of a weird way to do it, but it's better than nothing. I'll take it.
Yeah, I'm Karen Lohoff, and Dan is waving from outer space, it looks like. I'm from the Valley of the Sun, and it is shining, and I'm excited about that because we've had a few great days around here lately. Want to wish everyone a happy new year too. It just amazes me how quickly the years are moving along. You know, you do know they get faster the older you get, and it's amazing how fast I can get. So I'm looking forward to getting together with you this morning.
Trying to find a way to unmute there, Dan? No, okay. I wasn't sure. You were kind of messing with your phone, so I thought, oh, hey, maybe he's going to jump on and say, hey. Okay, cool. That's all good. I got to get my train of thought here. Okay. All right. Oh, well, thank you, Catherine, about my hair. I just trimmed it recently, and it's amazing how something so simple can make such a big difference. But when my hair is too long, it just looks all stringy, and had my husband trim it the other day, and it just was like, ding, I'm happy again. I'm like, okay, whatever. Weird hair. But anyway, okay, so chapter 15, let's see here. Let's kind of get going on this. Okay, so this chapter, I'm just going to read a little bit here at the beginning. It says the chapter on investing in yourself closed with 3 words. It becomes automatic. In those 3 simple magic words lies one of the great, underestimated, underappreciated, misunderstood secrets of the slight edge. It's the power of habit. We all know about bad habits. We struggle with them, talk about them, write books about them, and watch endless daytime television shows about them. The bad habits we know we should break but don't. The annoying habits others have and we wish they didn't. We're all aware of the insidious and destructive power bad habits can have in our lives, even if we are not quite aware of our own as we are of others. But with all that habit awareness, we tend to overlook the enormous power of positive, intentional habits. It's not that good habits don't exist or we don't have them. We do. It's just that we typically take them for granted. And I think that is a great point to start on this morning with that is, we do have good habits, and but we tend to focus on the bad ones, right? And so that causes us to create more bad habits, I think. So, okay, do we want to read like the essential points from the chapter at the back and then start from there, or how do we want to do this today, guys? Because there's like, what is it, 7 different habits that it is suggesting that we work on creating. Did everybody have a chance to read the chapter?
However you'd like to do it. We can just start with the 7.
Okay.
Just work our way through.
Okay. So, okay, well, I'll just read these essential points from chapter 15, and then I guess we'll just talk about each one. Hopefully we'll have plenty of time. I know last week we almost ran out of time. Okay, essential points from chapter 15. Number 1. Well, the main point. There are 2 kinds of habits, those that serve you and those that don't. 2, you have choice over habits through your choice of everyday actions. And 3, the way to erase a bad habit is to replace it with a positive habit. And then it goes on, it says, here are 7 powerful, positive, slight edge habits. Number 1 is show up. Be the frog who jumps off the lily pad. And I'm thinking that that's referring to another story previous in the book, that lily pad aspect. Number 2, show up consistently. Keep showing up when others fade out. Number 3, cultivate a positive outlook. See the glass as overflowing rather than just half full. Be committed for the long haul. Remember the 10,000-hour rule. Number 5, cultivate a burning desire backed by faith, not hoping or wishing, but knowing. And number 6, be willing to pay the price, because sometimes you have to quit the softball team. It's so funny how he kind of refers to his stories in here. So we're definitely going to have to go back and kind of go over what he's talking about here. And then the last one, number 7, practice the slight edge integrity. Do the things you've committed to doing even when no one else is watching. Okay, so number 1, it was show up. Let's talk about showing up. Who wants to start? Hey, Chris. Good to have you. Are you going to try and jump on video too so we can hear you?
Showing up is huge, guys. Like when they talk about, everybody's heard the percentages about like the 95% and the 5%, or sometimes it's a 99% and the 1%, and then the 1% of the 1%. I'm telling you, those are the people that show up. Like people, the thing about the lily pad and the frog was some kind of joke about, I don't know, 3 frogs are on a lily pad and they all decide to jump off, and how many are left on there, and they're all left on there because they all decided to, but they never did, or something. Like people say they're going to do stuff all the time and then they don't show up. And I'm sure everybody here has been in like a networking type business, and this is probably the this is one of the hardest things to get people to do, is just to show up, or to listen to the call, or log into their back office and look at it, or find their password so they can log in. I mean, people take it. Some people take businesses very nonchalantly, like they've done so many of them. I don't know how to exactly express what I'm saying, but they don't show up like you. And people get really excited about the possibilities of owning their own business, but once they figure out that there's work involved, then it fades as quickly as a New Year's resolution.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute there. Karen, did you want to jump out and talk about that one? It's just the 3 of us today because Dan's listening in and Chris is listening in, so we got to keep this thing going, just the 3 of us.
Well, I think I'm thrown a little bit by the thoughts around showing up. I feel like I've always been very good about showing up And I don't really understand the mindset of not doing that. I think that, you know, it's kind of interesting because Catherine did go ahead and hear me and put up a little beginning to checking out the colors, you know, of people. And I realized that my sister and I are, I don't know, it's as though we are from opposite sides of the planet or something. I asked her last night if she was ever curious, because as I thought about it, I thought, you know, she just does not seem to be curious about things, and I think that being curious has something to do with showing up, but maybe in some cases it only has to do with signing up. In other words, people think that they want to be a part of something that everybody else is a part of, but they don't want to do, you know, they don't want to mold themselves to fit into what's going on. And maybe another thing that I would like to comment on is, you were saying that we're all aware of bad habits and they create more bad habits. I tend to think, or at least I've been aware this year that I've been really working on developing a lot of good habits. But I really wasn't aware, you know, oh, this is crazy. I've had pointed out to me bad habits that I've been aware of. And one is this morning, this putting myself down. And I think that maybe, I was going to say, I don't think I've had that habit very long, but maybe I have. Maybe I've always had that habit and just not been aware of it. So I think that what I'm going to do the rest of this session is try and be a little bit more aware of how I actually fit with some of these habits, instead of trying to figure out how somebody else fits or doesn't fit with them. See if I can recognize where maybe I'm not showing up, or who knows, it'll be a surprise.
Yeah, good morning, everybody, and hi, happy holidays. That was actually really good, Karen, because I was like, you kind of felt both ways about stuff, and like sometimes you didn't get stuff done. I can relate to that. Makes a lot of sense.
I think you touched on a really good point there, Karen. The fact that, you know, we aren't always aware of some of the habits that we have, and it's books like these that help us really recognize those things, and that's powerful, because once we recognize them, then we can work on them. If we aren't recognizing them, then we can't even work on it. We don't even know we need to, and that's a big thing right there. One thing that I was thinking about on this particular one, the showing up, is that, you know, I was reading the chapter, and he was talking about when he took his daughter to college, and how when they got there was, like, I can't even remember how many students were there in her class. It was like, I want to say 6,000 or something. What was it? It was some huge number, some ridiculously huge number that was in her class. Maybe it was 600. I don't know. Anyway, it was a really big number. And no, it was 6,700 incoming freshmen. Okay, so and he was saying that out of the 6,700 freshmen that were there, the average GPA was like 4.0, and the SAT scores were in the top 10%. So she was like feeling super, super intimidated by the fact that she was there with all these other kids. And she was worried about not being able to, graduate in the top of her class because there's just so many kids. And he was like, he gave her this reminder. He was like, half of your battle is just showing up and doing the work. And because most of the kids are not going to do that, you're going to be ahead of the curve just by showing up every day. And it was within a very short period of time, she realized that it was very true, because within, let's see here, it was okay, she said 3 weeks later, or he was saying 3 weeks later, Amber called and said, Dad, remember that class I have 400 students in? It was like she was referring to one particular class this time. There was 400 students that started out in there, and she said there's only 80 people showing up for class now. Nobody had flunked out. They hadn't even had their first test. In just 3 weeks, 80% of the class was nowhere to be found. I mean, how crazy is that? I mean, it boggles my mind, really, to realize that in such a large group of achievers at that, I mean, if that many students had gone to that school with high grade point average and high SAT scores, and they got to college, and yet within a short period of time, 80% of them weren't even showing up. I mean, wow. That's pretty powerful right there, to realize that, you can be ahead of the curve by just showing up, and I've noticed this in my job, just in the workforce, is that, when I go to work and I'm there on time, I'm the only one who shows up a few minutes early. Nobody else does. And I'm like, I've always had the attitude of, if you're on time, you're late, because you should be already on the floor, clocked in, ready to go when it is your clock in time, versus just, I mean, that's just my opinion as far as working goes. And that's kind of the attitude that I've always felt like I had regarding any kind of job that I participate in, is that, you got to be there to do it. Jason, welcome. Can we hear you? I see your picture. Glad to have you join us again. There you are. Hey. I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey guys. Hey everybody.
Good to have you.
Thanks. Great to be here. Had to dig for the link a little bit, but I got it. So
Awesome.
Hey, great to see you all.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Not much. We're talking about chapter 15 of The Slight Edge, which is, we're talking about 7 different habits that we need to cultivate in order to keep on the success curve versus going down the failure curve. And the first one we were talking about is just showing up, being in that, the 80, the 10% of the people who at least show up. That's what we're talking about first. You're ahead of the curve just by showing up.
Well, hey, I'm here. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be able to be here.
Awesome.
That's cool. And that is so true. A lot of it is just showing up. We have, before you show up, before you actually do it, you have all these fears and questions and scenarios that run through your mind. And then when you, usually, at least for me, when I get there, and then it's like something totally different. It's so much easier than I thought. And, usually. So, and it did take a few more steps for me to get on this morning. So I had to push through that, but I made it. And now I feel better just for being here. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Awesome, Jason. We're glad to have you back again.
Yeah.
Right on. I'll go ahead and mute my mic and listen for a little bit.
Okay. All right. So, anybody else have anything they want to share on the showing up aspect before we move on to the next one? I had another thought that popped into my head a moment ago. Oh, okay. So here's one thing I kind of realized within the past, I don't know, a few years, ever since we've been kind of working on this personal development aspect, and I've realized that, you know, it's not that difficult to get ahead, if you will, just because of the fact that so many people just don't even try, you know. And I think once you realize that, and because we all think that it's so hard to accomplish anything or get ahead in our jobs or get ahead in life or any of those things, and it's, I've just experienced it, you know, once I realized, oh, okay, well, nobody else is even trying. If I just try a little bit, you know, I mean, how silly is that? Okay, okay, we want to talk about the next one. Next one is, let's see, number 2, be consistent. Who wants to jump out on being consistent?
First, you got to show up to be consistent, right? I see how these are going together. Inconsistent. Oh my God, that's an area I lack. That's really important. I'm sure I'm consistent in a number of areas, but I can see where I lack. So it's really important to be consistent. And consistent is how you build up the momentum or the habit to create a new habit or a new activity, whatever you're doing. Anyway.
Yeah, as a blue personality, consistency is something that I struggle with, and it's forces me into what I consider the mundane, and so that's really hard for me because I get bored really, really quickly. And so this is an area that I work on myself constantly. But I have to say that we're talking about, well, it kind of depends on what you're working on. We're sort of an entrepreneurial group here, so I tend to take it to that side. But you need to be, for some of these businesses, online businesses, or not just online businesses, any kind of business, even a brick and mortar business that you're trying to do, it's going to take the mundane. It's going to take consistency. It's going to take showing up, not for a week or 2 or a month or 3 or 6. I'm talking 2 or 3 years before you really start getting to the point where you feel like you should be after a month. like you think you should be able to work this hard for a month and everything's going to go amazingly. And it might, especially if it's like a networking business and you happen to bring in a big leader that has a huge team or something. I mean, that can happen. But for the majority of people, it takes consistent effort for an extended period of time for things to really start clicking. Now, once they do, it's an amazing thing, and it's sort of like giving birth. Like, it hurts so bad during it, and then when it's done, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad, But so it's kind of like that, but it still takes all of those labor pains before you get to that point.
Yeah, that is so true. And and I like how he refers to his daughter in this chapter about how, she 4 years later, she graduated at the top of her class simply by just doing these 2 simple things: showing up and being consistent. She wasn't any better or smarter than any of the other kids. They were all cream of the crop, top-notch students, but Amber had one distinct advantage that the others didn't. She had a philosophy that drove her to stay on course even when everyone else was doing the opposite. She showed up consistently and succeeded because she had a simple philosophy that she applied every day, rain or shine. Show up and and be consistent, right? Because you can show up once and sure, you're there for a minute, but if you don't go every day, or you're not doing the thing every day, then you're not going to accomplish anything. And and this applies in so many different ways. I've mentioned recently that I had listened to the Millionaire Mind Intensive not too long ago, and then I started putting aside just a tiny bit of my paycheck every single week. I mean, it's so silly. It's so silly that I wasn't doing this before, but I wasn't. I'll be honest, I just wasn't. And now that I've been doing that, it's accumulating. It's like effortless. It's so stupid how easy it is, it's just effortless. And now I can see this little nest egg growing, and I'm like, such an idiot. I mean, but that's kind of what it feels like, because when you realize how simple something can be that can make such a huge difference in your life, and we just don't do it. For what is it with that? I don't even know. I mean, it's the same thing when it comes to diet and exercise and relationships. I mean, you can neglect your relationship in the same way by not showing up in your relationship and not being consistent about your attitude towards your spouse or your partner or your sister or your mother, whoever. I mean, it's like when my daughter, she just recently moved to South Carolina, and I'm not the best at staying in touch with people for I don't even know what the deal is. I'm just not a big person to be on the phone talking to people, and that includes my friends and family. And I knew that if I didn't, really be consistent about staying in touch with my daughter, I could lose part of that relationship. I mean, with your family, you can go a long time without talking to them, and it's, not the end of the world. But at the same time, you lose an aspect of that relationship if you aren't consistently communicating with them. And and I didn't want to lose that with my daughter, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put up my calendar, and every week I'm gonna call her, or I'm gonna tell her to call me, or whatever, and just be really consistent with communicating with her, as I have not been in other relationships where we've like my girlfriend, she moved to Florida, and I haven't talked to her in months, and I'm like, gosh, I need to get on that. But I got to create one habit with my daughter first and then move from there. But anyway.
I'm not sure what it was you said, Samantha, that made me think about this, but earlier this morning I was watching a video of someone who's become one of my favorites, and I mentioned him last week. His name is Jordan Peterson, and he's a professor, and so a lot of his videos, not all of them, because he does tons of videos, but a lot of his videos are in front of his classes. And this one caught my attention because it's entitled something about you need a routine. You need a daily routine to stay sane. Well, clearly I haven't managed to stay sane in my life. So whenever I have the opportunity to pick up something that somebody else has figured out about that, I'm curious. And he talked about how that everyone requires to do certain things consistently, that like getting up kind of generally around the same time. Maybe generally, I've never been any good at going to bed at the same time. I like to get up, so that's not as much of a problem. But anyway, he was kind of, the way he was describing it, and he always talks with his hands, and so his hands are always just going constantly. And he also walks as he lectures, and so there's a lot of activity going on. And I was watching him, And I actually got this picture about how we train one another, how all of us in the world train each other so that we're all staying sane, which I thought was interesting because obviously I've been left out at some point. But as I was thinking about that, I was thinking, well, I don't like anyone else training me. That's like one of my things that I'm aware of that I know that I don't like is for somebody else to leap in there and say, well, you need to do this or you should do that or whatever. And so I thought, well, to avoid that, I need to be doing some of these things. And then he talked about how we look each other in the eye. We kind of jostle each other, and he didn't talk about the subway, but I was picturing the subway. And, all these things that we do that we don't even realize that is keeping us all on track. And I do stay, despite not wanting to be trained, I do stay pretty much on track. Like if you smile at me, I'm going to follow you around quite consistently and pay attention to you and want to know what you have to say and be close to you and all that kind of thing. And if you indicate to me that you disapprove of me, I'm going to want to kind of slide to the back and, manage to get out through the crowd and not have that much to do with you. So I don't know what I've said or if it makes any sense. But anyway, good luck with that, I guess.
When I think of consistency, I think of how the act of being consistent in something that you're just starting to do allows it to be brought forth to the front of your mind. And if you're consistent enough with it, it really helps to bring it to the top of your mind. And it sort of perpetuates itself in allowing you to remember to do those things. So for me, if I just start being consistent in at least trying to get something done and accomplished, it sort of breaks through those barriers for me, so that the next time I do it, I see a smoother or an easier path. And so for me, thinking of it that way helps to minimize any negative feeling I have towards my inability to be consistent sometimes. So like when it comes to personal relationships, which, I tend to have a difficult time juggling lots of personal relationships and handling the different personalities correctly or in the best way. And so that can make me feel like that can sort of get me down about the whole idea of doing that or attempting to do that. So then I sort of push it away. But the more I try to just at least be aware of it, and not really put out any grand expectations for what I'm accomplishing in those areas, it at least gives me a starting point and allows me to move a little bit further if I choose. So I guess my point is that in just being a little bit consistent in something, for me, it helps bring things to the top of my mind. And so that it's easier for me to remember to take those certain things into account, to be aware of those things on a regular basis. For instance, being on in this group, just being consistent with checking the messages makes me more aware that, yes, this happens every week. I can come be part of this group every Saturday morning. And then I remember that I have this group I want to be part of every Saturday morning. And so I won't schedule things over that time. And so that's sort of an example. So I think, yeah, the consistency for me, it certainly hasn't always been there. I'm not really good with, I haven't been in the past really great with scheduling things. And if it's not on the top of my mind, it sort of ends up taking less of a priority. So having that consistency in like what you were saying, Samantha, saving a little bit each week, it would be hard for me to be consistent in saving, $100 each week, but I could save, to start off with, I could say, I'm going to save $5 each week. And by doing that consistently, then start remembering as I'm spending my money that I want to be saving a little bit of this each day. Anyway, that was a thought I had on that.
Okay, let's talk about the next one. Number 3 habit, have a positive outlook. This one's a big one here. He had done he was reflecting on some studies that had been done. One of which was, let's see here if I can just read this little part about this, was in the late 90s, a positive psychologist named Marcel Losada conducted some fascinating research with business teams. He placed these groups of business teams or group of business people in different conference rooms. And, okay, I'm just going to summarize this. This is a lot of information. Anyway, he recorded and analyzed them, classified all their comments and statements and things that were coming out, and determined that the ones that had positive attitudes, they accomplished more, they created more, they were doing more, and having, something much more significant happen in their business than the people who had a negative attitude, and I don't know if you guys know anybody that's negative, or you've experienced being around people that have a negative attitude. But I have noticed that, just in my work environment, that the people who come in there and they talk about the good things about the job, they're the ones that are happiest. They're the ones that are most productive. They're the ones that have a great attitude, and they're running around, they're happy, having a good time. And then the people who are complaining all the time, that are complaining about, they don't like this aspect of our work, or they don't like that, or they don't like a customer, or they don't like whatever, is they make themselves miserable. And and I've noticed even with myself, and I don't know what it is about, maybe it's just me, but something will happen that's not so pleasant, and then I can't stop thinking about it. I'll keep thinking about this negative thing, and it ruins my day, right? But yet, if I take a moment to realize what I'm doing and start thinking about something that is positive, then it lifts me right back up again, and I'm out of that funk that I got myself in. And I feel like this is true for not just being at work, but in every situation. It's like in relationship, if all we do is think about all the things that frustrate us about our spouse, then we cause ourselves to have a crappy relationship, to be unhappy in our relationships, to be mad at our sisters or our mothers or brothers or whoever it is. We sit there and we focus on those things, then that causes us to have more discomfort in the situation, versus if we're focused on the positive stuff, then we create more happiness about the situation, or comfort, or contentment, all those different things. What do you guys think about having a positive outlook? Excuse me.
This is another huge one. I can see why it made the one of the 7 habits, because I've noticed this tremendously with my physical health and with other people's physical health, that their mental attitude about that is, it really leads to either further sickness or further health, to be quite honest. Like, there's a lady called Caroline Leaf, I think is her name. And they've done studies, and they've discovered that your brain, your thoughts, it really does like have effects, especially on your health. And she says, and I probably get the statistic wrong, I think it's more than 75% of illnesses they've been able to track to thought. So our thoughts really are powerful. And I know personally with my own experience with this accident and stuff, and being in this pain, you can't focus on the pain. I mean, for years I had to take the P word completely out of my vocabulary, completely. Like, I just couldn't acknowledge it at all. And what I see because I'm in a lot of Facebook groups with people with different conditions and stuff, what I see is the people that focus on the condition and focus on the pain and focus on how they've been wronged by this doctor or that doctor. I mean, we all have been, and I certainly have expressed my dissatisfaction with that as well, but I don't focus on it. But there are people that just like stay in the Facebook groups all day, just like that's all they talk about from the time they get up until the time they go to bed. And I see them getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And I see the people who are focused on other things, finding different ways of doing things, new ways, like adapting to the situation or whatever, and focusing elsewhere. I see those people getting weller and weller. So this is really huge, whether it's talking about, like you said, Samantha, if you focus only on, all the things you don't like about your spouse, you're not going to be married long. And obviously I know this, I'm divorced 3 times. So I speak from experience. And even with ourselves, if we only notice what we don't like about ourselves, it's going to send us down into a spiral, and a downward spiral, So whether you're talking about your health or personal relationships or your business or whatever it is, this is paramount, I think. This should probably be, this is even more important than showing up, because if you show up and you have a bad attitude, you know what I mean? You might as well not show up. Well, I'm not going to say that, because you can't always keep a good attitude. And that's one of the things that he mentions. I don't know which one he mentions that under, but he talks about just because you have a positive attitude doesn't mean that you don't get in a funk. He calls it getting in a funk. And he's like, everybody gets in a funk. It doesn't matter how, quote, successful you are or famous you are or positive minded you are or whatever. Like, everybody gets in a funk. And sometimes, and he even acknowledges, I'm not talking about a 2-minute funk. I'm talking about, days and weeks funk sometimes. But the thing is, what are you focused on? You can pull yourself out of those funks. Everybody goes into them, but some people stay in them, and some people do things to get themselves out of them. So I think everybody just needs like their own personal funk box, what works for you, because what works for you probably won't work for me, and what works for me won't work for you. But if we all have our own funk going, then our own funk boxes, then you know what to reach into and pull out. Like, music really helps me, you guys, and nature, being in nature. And yesterday it was snowing and I couldn't be in nature because I don't do especially well on slippery surfaces and things. So I just brought nature into my home through my computer, and that was almost as amazing.
I like that you reminded us about him talking about the funk. That's a huge thing because, I find myself in a funk off and on too. And, it used to be when I would get in a funk or I would feel that depression coming over me, is that I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought that, I don't know. I don't know what it was that I was thinking. I just thought there was nothing I could do about it, that it was that I was upset, and I would just make myself more upset because I'd be thinking about all the things that I was upset about. And when I just started to recognize that it was just a funk and it wasn't me, that there wasn't something wrong with me, that I wasn't broken in some way, that it was just this dark cloud hanging over my head for a short period of time, and I could recognize that it was something separate from myself and be like, okay, sure, it's there, it's hanging over my head, I'm feeling less than great, but it's not me. So I can recognize that and I can overcome it because of recognizing that kind of separation from it. I don't know, that's the way that I have been able to overcome a lot of funks that I've been in longer term times earlier in my life when I was experiencing a lot of depression. It wasn't until I realized it was not me that I was able to overcome that and and just work on changing things. And of course, when we read that book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, God, that little tiny book that we read had like magical powers in my life, literally, just by changing the words I was saying about situations. And I don't know, was everybody on, and did all of you participate in that book? Because it was huge. For me anyway. I mean, it was really huge. And every time that I feel like I get into a funk or I start having like a anger, frustration, annoyance, any of those like unpleasant emotions, either towards someone else or towards something in my life or about someone or about myself or about whatever, is if I just remember to recognize what it is that I'm saying to myself in those moments. And I know, Catherine, you talk a lot about Byron Katie and asking yourself those questions. And I think that's part of it, is recognizing, oh, okay, what is it that I'm saying to myself? And then changing what I'm saying to myself. Is just change the words. You don't even have to necessarily believe it. It's just to start changing the words, and that changes your focus. And then it starts pointing you down another path, which in my experience has helped me get out of funks, get out of depression, get out of unpleasant feelings in the moment, whatever. Okay, I'll stop talking.
Which book were you talking about, Samantha?
The What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Yep, you mentioned it.
Yeah, that was a great book, and it really opened my eyes as well. I think it makes you very aware of what dialogue is going on inside, and how we can tweak it to really help us have a more positive outcome. Something you said, Catherine, was in regards to music. I think that's a great way to kind of recalibrate for me as well. And I seem to be very sensitive to vibrations, even with personality vibrations as well. And so when I get around certain people, I will draw from their whatever it might be. If they're happy, I tend to be more happy. If they're drama, if they're more dramatic, then I feel that energy as well. And even when it seems that even when I'm not around people, sometimes I can sort of pick up on the vibrations that are out there. I don't try to get too deep into analyzing all that, but I just am aware that it affects me. And so I guess for me is the trick is finding a balance as to, how much of that do I want to influence my feelings and my emotions, and how much do I want to have control over my emotions and assert my power to give myself a positive mindset. And with that book you mentioned there, Samantha, it was it made me aware that even though I could make that decision to be positive, that book allowed me to be aware that there were these habitual thoughts or habitual dialogue that was going on that sort of would defeat my sometimes defeat my my willingness to be positive. But that made me aware and made me allowed to be able to change that dialogue and dig deep into that, and really wrestle it down and turn it around and give myself new thought patterns that would instead pop into my mind and be habitual to give me that positive mindset. So yeah, that was an excellent book, and I agree. Being positive sometimes isn't always that simple, but if we work at it, and again, be consistent, and hey, even showing up in our own thoughts and emotions to assert our will on how we want to see things and how we want to feel about things, how we choose to feel about things. It can be very powerful and life changing, I think. So that's great. I really appreciate you all, and thanks for again bringing all this to the top of my mind and allowing it to flourish, within me each and every weekend. Appreciate it.
We're running out of time fast today, guys. We're only on the third one or the fourth one? No, we're on the third one. Okay.
Yeah.
Chris, did you want to jump out and say something about?
I guess we're saying
about
we're
positive?
about to say goodbyes, but I was going to make a comment, I guess.
Right.
But like
I don't know. Do you guys think we need to just make this a 2-part series and talk about the other ones next week? What do you think?
Sure.
Fine
Okay.
with me. Seems like there's
All right.
enough material.
Yeah, I think so too. So, okay, well, let's so for today we had, just to kind of reiterate, we had number 1, which was show up. Number 2 is be consistent. Number 3 was have a positive outlook. So did anybody have anything else they wanted to say on any of those before we wrap it up for today?
It was just a little on something you had said, Samantha, that like where you could see people were making a negative scenario for themselves, and you could feel that they were coming off like a lot of people are polarized on a very negative default level, and sometimes you can see that and you're like, I don't want to go there. And at the same time, I was having a little bit of mixed feeling within, because I was realizing like, well, I create both of my thoughts, good and bad, whether fear or an attitude too. So I also I struggle with some thoughts. I know that I don't tend towards the negative, so I notice that too when personalities tend to be entirely that way, but then it's also sometimes there'll be a struggle to put your best foot forward, or to be positive, or to go in things the right way and see if you can have the best attitude. And you can't always judge, but then you have a pretty good feeling about how things turn out
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd just like to say, thank you to you, Samantha, and to Catherine, and to Karen for being on today as well. And it's great to see Chris as well on today. And I wanted to thank you, Samantha, for your consistency. Oh, and hey, Dan. Just Catherine and Samantha have been really consistent with making sure that this Saturday Mastermind happens each weekend, and it's available for me and everyone. So I really appreciate that, because it's a good example of how being consistent, we can have an impact on other people's lives. So again, thank you very much, and it's great to be here.
Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to go way out left field here, so you'll have to forgive me. This has absolutely nothing to do with anything we've discussed today. But this past holiday, we had a white elephant exchange. Some friends and I wound up with a set of angel cards. And so as we started today, I pulled an angel card just to see if there was a certain thing that needed to be brought up. And it is so far in left field, I really feel like I have to bring it up, because this message is obviously not for me, because I have zero issues in this area. And I don't say that from like you'll understand when I read this, what I mean when I say that. So this is an angel card that was pulled at the beginning. The angel is Sonia, and she says, I bring you a message from your deceased loved one. I am happy, at peace, and I love you very much. Please don't worry about me. Your heart has been heavy with grief, and I am here to reassure you. I am a guardian angel to your deceased loved one, and I want you to know that there is no reason for you to worry. Your loved one is very happy and has adjusted to the transition very well. There is no anger or upset directed towards you, only love and understanding. You have done nothing wrong, dear one, so please don't blame yourself in any way. You did everything that you could, and your loved one has asked me to share this appreciation with you. You and your loved one still share great love between your souls. That love can never die. Although you miss your loved one's physical presence, you have already connected spiritually in your dreams, as well as through feeling, hearing, smelling, or seeing your loved one's essence. Your loved one is as alive as you are, even more alive in many ways, relieved of earthly cares or bodily pains. Your loved one is freer and happier than ever. As soon as you complete your life's purpose and it's your time to make the transition, you will be reunited in each other's arms. In the meantime, please know that your loved one is with you often, and that the angels surround you continuously. So I talk to dead people, so I know this message isn't for me. But somewhere, whether it's somebody on this panel or someone that watches this at a later time, needed to hear that. So thank you for letting me say that. Bless you all. Have an amazing, wonderful new year. I love you all so much.
Love you all very, very much. I'm so glad to be here, and I appreciate you saying that, Jason. You know, I was thinking when we were talking about the consistency aspect about how long we have been doing this, and I realize that not everybody can participate all the time, but when you do show up, I enjoy having you here so much, and it is. I don't know. I guess that I feel, I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here. I guess that I'm just like, I'm glad to be here for you and for anyone else who is out there watching and participating, even though we don't know you're there. I'm glad that we're here and that you're here too. So I love you all.
Right on. Right on. Thank you. Awesome. Happy New Year's, everyone.
Happy New Year.
That was a nice
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
everyone. And happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Here's baby. Yeah. Fantastic.
All right, guys. We'll have a great, awesome, amazing weekend and a wonderful new year. And we will see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. And you can always find the instructions for how to join by going to zoom.saturdaymorningmastermind.com. That's zoom.saturdaymorningmastermind.com. And then there'll be links below this video where you can get that. And also jump in our Facebook group, participate with us there, and watch our recordings on YouTube. That's it. Okay, bye for now.
Thanks for coming, everybody.